live from the glorious city of Melbourne
and live from the USA.
Your superstar hosts, Michael Sopel.
I'm going to say we play and win a final.
Sam Manhannett.
The top four.
Like it.
Carlton.
There it is. There it is. I was waiting for it.
This is In the Ballpark.
Hello and welcome to another edition of In the Ballpark, the AFL podcast, featuring myself, Sam Manhannett, and Michael Sopel on the other side of the world, still keeping in touch with the Sharon, the magnificent game of the Sharon. How's your week been?
Oh, Sammy boy, absolutely I am. But let me tell you, mate, I did a 30-kilometre run the other day. Wow. Yes, I am a bit of a lunatic. The Nike Run Club app that you kindly introduced me to, I've been using ad nauseum. And my word, Sammy, 30 kilometres. I often look at the running meters of the players in the AFL, and just to think that they clock up some big mileage, but are also able to still have elite kicking skills and, you know, do all the other tough stuff. It's just, you do have to marvel at it. So, look, it's been a while since I've been down to a park with a footy, Sammy. I wonder now whether I've got the tank in me to be able to, you know, maybe last a little bit longer, take some bounces on the flank and kick a few snags.
Running is half the game, and I've learnt that very hard in pub footy. You need a sufficient tank, and that can solve half your problems. You can get to the ball first, which now you're making me put pressure more on myself because I've never reached 30 Ks. I would like to do a half marathon at some point, but I need to get my running back up and going again. Speaking of pub footy, I'm back this weekend.
Shout out.
Saturday against the Totes at Victoria Park, 2:45. There you go. They wear
game, Sammy.
The prison bars, so the Collingwood prison bars. So that just fires me up enough in itself.
So a bit of spite in that clash.
But back to proper footy. What was your favourite moment from last round before we get into the big round ahead?
Well, Sam, it probably seems like the most obvious one, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think Jack Crisp being able to play, 240 consecutive games. He breaks Jim Stein's record. Collingwood are 2 goals down late in the last quarter against Geelong at the MCG. Massive crowd on a Saturday night. They get a quick break out of the centre of the ground, and then all of a sudden, who marks it in the forward 50? Jack Crisp. And I'm thinking to myself, what a beautifully scripted moment this is. The siren goes, he has the chance to kick the winning goal, and he pulls it really early. I think that's worth noting. He's usually a really beautiful kick. I mean, he's probably more renowned on the run, but I just think, probably the pressure got to him. It reminded me of Isaac Smith in that, I think that qualifying final a couple of years ago against, he was playing for Hawthorn at the time against Geelong, and I think he pulled the kick and probably seemed a little too confident at the time. But, how often have you seen after the siren moments like this? But, you know, I think Ash McGrath, he was playing for Brisbane. It was against Geelong. It was at the Gabba. I think it was coined at the time, the miracle of on grass. And he kicked like maybe a barrel, and he wins that game. I think it was his 200th game. So you don't typically see milestone men kick a goal after the siren in their special game to win the game. So that would have been an amazing moment. But Sam, just even the theatre to build up to that very moment, I just thought, wow, what a moment. Game of the round. I think we may have said between that and the Q Clash. Q Clash didn't deliver. We'll get into that later, but this moment did. So that was probably my moment of the round, Sammy.
It was a good game. But you've taken the moment out of me. But I think mine is a bit more like you've taken the positive elements out of it, but I think I'm more on the negative elements from that because finally a game where Collingwood how many times have they sneaked a win in like that?
Right.
And finally, it's not gone their way. So I think the universe has been kind to us because, as we've seen, they've got some good wins so far. But I think it was last year or the year before, there was just a whole 10 games in a row, and probably 8 of them they should have won. And somehow they just fell over the line. They tripped over and knocked the ball across the line, and that's all they needed. A win's a win, though. You can't really knock that back too much. But, yes, no, that was my spiteful moment of the round. So round 9 we're in. We will get to last night's game, which was another win for Collingwood, but we'll go through some of the stories from the week. And it's a bit of the main kind of topics that drove the conversation throughout the week was banter versus not banter, and sledging and that kind of thing has come back into play. And I think we've got two clear types of what's okay and what's not okay. So we'll start off with what's not okay. And Willie Rioli with the physical threats to another player sent after a game, and I discussed this with a mate last night. He has finished the game, cooled down, and still gone ahead and sent a message. So usually in the heat of the moment, the white line fever.
Yep.
You could say anything, blurt something out at a player that's stupid, and then you just go up to him at the end of the game. Hey, mate, great game. Some players are like that. Okay, whatever. But he actually cooled down and then physically sent this. And so if you didn't know, he told, I think it was Bailey Dale, he sent a message for this round not to go out in Alice Springs because he knows people there. So a physical threat. Which is wrong, really wrong. And the fact that it took the AFL so long to come down on that and had to wait for him to concede. So it ended up that Willie Rioli took the week off and said, all right, I'll sit this week out before they initiated anything. But it just seems so ironic when they flip the bird, all right, here's a fine straight away. But I really don't understand the consistency of the AFL, and I think it's really frustrating. And apparently it's not the first time with Willie Rioli's said things like this to players on other teams that's come out as well during the week. So that's definitely one to watch because we just want to rule that out completely out of the game because that's not okay. From a professional standpoint, if you said that in any other kind of workplace, HR, bang.
Yeah, wouldn't
You're in
float.
trouble. So what are your thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, he's been in the news a bit this year, hasn't he?
Yes.
There was that situation with Hawthorn as well, wasn't there, where I think he sort of wrote a pretty long message about some things that weren't okay that he experienced, and that's you got to also be careful about that as well. How do you kind of deal with that? Do you go public with it? Do you, deal with it through, probably more of the more sensible channels? So you're protected, the other organisation's protected. There's a formal apology, but yeah, when anything does get public, it becomes messy, Sam. And I think that was a situation that got messy. This one, I think he's going to miss the game now. I can't remember what exactly transpired for that to happen, but yeah, what I will say is that I still remember back to when Willie Rioli was banned, I think, for 2 years. I think there was a whole drug saga that went on, I think, somewhere around 2021. And, he was at the West Coast Eagles at the time. They really supported him in that. And then when he requested the trade to South Australia, I'm sure there was reason for it, but I think there was a narrative around at the time around whether, he should have repaid the faith for West Coast for sticking with him because they could have easily just, cut him off their list. But they persisted with him and obviously, played in the premiership side there. So, yeah, there's been situations there where I just think behaviour and just the way things have went has been a bit murky. So, yeah, from an individual standpoint, I think, there's just things have probably could have been handled a lot better, and this is probably another one of those situations, Sam.
Should the AFL think about maybe something like a as part of the player contract, a social media policy, because I'm sure there's probably is one already, but maybe for some players, look, if you get caught, being inappropriate on social media, that you can't have a public-facing account, has to be private, because you're not only putting yourself into disrepute, you're putting the club, the AFL, the sponsors. I feel like because when you're in that kind of position, where you've got an outward-facing account that can be seen by a lot of people, and it's just so easy for you to send something bad that you regret and looks bad on everything. Should we get to the stage where if players can't be trusted, they should not have is that a case to be thought about, or?
Yeah, I mean it's a really interesting point you make. I think based on your argument there, you'd have to kind of say yes. I think it's saving players from themselves and not bringing the clubs, the members, the different sponsors into disrepute. What I will say on that is, Sam, that I've been keeping a really close eye on the name, image and likeness space here in the United States. And so a lot of college athletes are now getting paid, and a lot of college athletes previous to this were kind of, if they had really good managers, if they did have managers, if they were a high enough profile, let's say like a quarterback at a big school that was clearly going to get picked up by a NFL club, come the draft time, it was really kind of incumbent on them to have good influences around them so they could make the money on the side, whether it was with Nike or with sometimes with other sort of smaller sponsors, but still an income flow while they were playing the sport. And then obviously when they get to the NFL, they've got big contracts, so they don't really have to worry about that anyway. Yeah. But really the importance on establishing their brand before they get to that really big point in their career is super duper important. But now that they're getting paid, there's this sort of expectation that all of these players do need to have, a public-facing profile so the fans kind of know, okay, well, this is a high draft prospect. I wonder what they're kind of up to, what their schooling experience is like. And so I think the ones that are earning good coin, Sam, at that level are actually paying for, like almost like a social media manager to sort of help their brand. And I think that's a really great idea. So I wonder with AFL players whether, they should start looking, particularly into the more higher profile ones. Obviously your Paddy Dangerfields and your Christian Petrarcas, they've got a pretty good off-field reputation and they're doing a lot of side hustle things. And so, they're getting paid well for that and they're kind of doing that themselves. But if they're time poor, Sam, that's a good position to potentially bring like a manager in to do that. And I know there's a lot of quality people out there that can do that. So I wonder if that will then become a consideration with the salaries going up, Sam, whether they can get people to manage their profiles.
And I'm sure... Okay, if you're good at that and you're a good entrepreneur, and some players do their own brand deals and stuff, but back to what I was saying before, that should be a privilege to have a public where you can earn coin like that. So if you get caught saying horrible things and threats like that, then you shouldn't be allowed to do that. I think as an AFL, they've got to cut that down because it's just it's not a good look for the game. They want to get sledging and that kind of thing and threats out of kids sport and that kind of thing. So it's just another stain on that kind of thing. So that's the bad side of sledging. Yep, go on.
What I will say on that as well, Sam, is, a lot of people in the United States have been sort of saying to me, wow, like Australia made that under 16 ban on social media, and a few people sort of said, oh, wow, that's pretty extreme. But a lot of people have been praising it. And there was I think it was that British show, Sam, that came out about mental health and social media and sledging and all that kind of stuff that led in an actual death. I mean, you can kind of see the reasons why that this kind of ban has happened. And I think Australia, being a pretty progressive nation, to make that big stand has been praised worldwide. And so I completely agree. It kind of lends into this where the AFL is really, particularly at the lower leagues and stuff, is kind of looked upon as like, you are setting the standards, right? You are the role models. So with that kind of ban happening, to see that in the AFL, to them to then take that next step, I think is a pretty, progressive step. And, maybe the AFL should be doing that as well, considering, just how many mentors there are within the industry. So, I'd like to see it.
Okay, so that's the bad side of that sort of thing. But the good, debatable side of things was what Bailey Smith said early on in the week when I think a post-match interview, he said he was much more happy to be playing in front of a full crowd at the MCG rather than playing in Ballarat, which I thought is a bit of tongue-in-cheek.
It is.
It builds anticipation between his match against his old sides. And I thought Marcus's Bontempelli response to that was pretty good as well. So that to me, I think is harmless. You're allowed to. I know in Australian culture, the tall poppy syndrome. Anytime someone comes out like that, oh, you can't be doing that. You can't have a personality. I think it's a bit much. I think it's a bit of fun, bit of harmless fun. And you probably see a lot of it all the time in American sport, the banter and that kind of thing between players.
Oh, yeah, and especially when it's like so close to home like that as well. I'm sure he still has Marcus Bontempelli's number. I'm sure Bailey's got some really good relationships down at the Dogs. Probably not with Luke Beveridge, the head coach, but certainly with some of the other players there. I mean, it's all a bit of fun. When I actually heard the comment, there was like a comment underneath the video that said Bailey did not miss, and I completely agree with that. I think that was like the perfect chop at the perfect time. Like he couldn't get the timing any better. He may have even rehearsed that kind of answer, Sammy,
Maybe.
as well. I just thought it was like it just hit the point beautifully. He wouldn't have been able to say that after a loss. So I think the fact that both parties kind of came together and had a little bit of banter on it, I think it was just perfect theatre. It was great timing, and I was kind of thinking about that. I'm like, oh, wow, Bailey's playing in front of 80,000, and then the Dogs, down in Ballarat, they're building a new stand there, so they couldn't get too many people in anyway.
A quick sidebar on that.
A bit harsh.
Why are the AFL playing in a half-built Ballarat stadium? I know they're doing works on it. Why? I understand the importance of this contract for the Western Bulldogs of Ballarat. That's great. It's good that we're getting proper games for points in regional areas, something like the Ballarat Community for Sport. That's fantastic. But when the ground is not even half full, they could barely get 5,000 in there. You bring that to Marvel, I feel like they're shooting themselves in the foot. And I think they're playing at least another game. And it's not going to be done till next year, this redevelopment. So I really think that's a poor decision from the AFL and the club putting a game out there like that when it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. There's got to be a minimum standard, Sam, for that. There really has to be. It should be like 10,000 or you don't get a game, or 20,000 you don't get a game. I mean, it really hurt the optics. I mean, the fact that I know at Geelong they had that construction site for ages, but at least half of the stadium still had atmosphere. But you pretty much the entire at every centre bounce, Sam, there was like 6 or 7 lorries in the background and trucks, and it was aesthetically really poor as well. And you know me, I'm a big aesthetics guy, and I'm just like, this isn't good to watch. This is, And so I completely agree with you there, Sam. I think they've got to be better than that. Maybe move that game down to Tasmania, a different local ground that's somewhat connected. But, I just thought that was – I mean, could have they had that game at Whitten Oval? Maybe not. Maybe they're not up for that, but I don't know.
The capacity would probably have been similar. So I don't know. Maybe that's something they – could have thought about. Maybe there's contracts with Ballarat and stuff that they goes a bit deeper, but we don't want to see that. We want to see full people in the stands and people wanting to go to that,
Agreed.
We're breaking attendance records left, right and centre, and I'm sure plenty of more fans would have been. It's so windy at that ground. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, also, last story for the moment. AFL 26 has come out this week, yesterday. as of recording on today, Friday. And the player ratings are out, which are controversial. So I'm going to give you some names, and you can give me your feelers on some of their ratings position. Now, I'm guessing most of it would have been done based on last year's performance. So if they're, so just take it with a grain of salt, okay? And it's never, I think when it comes down to these things, they're never 100% accurate, but we'll see. We'll see. So, let's go. So here we go. Just getting the article up here. So the ratings are out. Some players appear to have changed since early this week when it was announced. Patrick Cripps led the way at 94 overall. So winning the Brownlow, it's... I had this chat with someone last night where just because you win the Brownlow doesn't mean you're the best player. But, yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to leave that debate for another time because I feel like we'll be here forever.
Oh, yeah.
Cripps is still ahead of number one, ahead of Collingwood's Nick Dacos on 93.
Okay.
Marcus Bontempelli has been downgraded to a 92 overall, tied with GWS's Tom Green and Fremantle's Caleb Sarong.
Ooh. Okay.
Not sure about Bont.
I feel like Bont would be on the same tier as Nick Dacos.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, what else? Lowest rated players, is this just for a bit of fun?
Oh, okay, here we go.
Pre-season signings, Gold Coast Ben Jepson on 52, Carlton's Will White 52. Oh, well, he should come up a little bit with his goal
He
kicking.
should now, I think
Jack
so,
Henderson,
yeah.
51, St Kilda's Harry Boyd 51, Essendon's Tom Edward 48.
Oh,
Highest rated AFLW players, Ebony Marinoff 93. Alexandra Anderson, 93. Matilda Scholes, 92. And Monique Conti, 92.
Now, Sam, can I just quickly say, Ebony Marinoff, Patrick Cripps, both on the cover. Now, did they choose those two players because they were the highest ranked through all of the data? Or did they do that as a publicity kind of thing because they went, okay, these are the two poster people that we want, so we're going to give them the highest rating?
Well... yeah, there's that too. It could be something to do with that. But I just thought, it's Well, it's Cripper's first time on the front cover, I think.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
We'll
and
take
he looked
it.
good, I've got to be honest.
91, Zach Butters, Max Holmes, Dan Houston, Isaac Heaney, Noah Anderson, Lockie Neal, Adam Treloar, Andrew Brayshaw, Charlie Curnow, Jesse Hogan. So...
ooh. Treloar was a bit high.
Now, just for your sake, I will find Essendon.
All right, who's the highest Bombers player? Thank you, Sammy. Merritt's got to be in the 80s if you're putting,
all right, let's have a bit of a guessing game. All right, so I've got...
okay.
All right, the top one is Merritt. What do you think his rating is?
Oh, he's got to be 87.
Close, 89.
89, okay, that's more like it, yes.
Jai Caldwell.
He should be in the 90s.
88.
Jai Caldwell, 88, yeah. He
Nick
was good
Martin,
last season.
87. Darcy Parish, 86. Same as Cole Langford.
Yeah, I think Darcy's probably, that's flattering. That's probably on 2022 form.
Oh, now, I saw something, I don't know if it was last week but I saw a kid's sign at the Essendon game and it made me laugh because I remember the first show that we recorded this year when we talked about Kako. And you said, let's go wacko for Kako.
For Kako.
And it was on the sign.
Yes.
I couldn't believe it.
I love it. Wacko for Kako.
Maybe there was listeners.
I think they've got to put that into the game. By the way, Sam, what are your thoughts on the game? Because I know we were talking off air about people criticising, the cost and also the graphics, but where does this rank as far as just in your mind the initial thoughts on the game and what excited you?
I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't seen that much of it yet.
Right.
But I think what they did with the last one, they built a good base to finally build upon because it felt like every time a game come out for the last couple of years, to begin, that they were just starting from scratch. every time, and it just didn't feel like it was progressing anywhere. But finally, I feel like we're at a spot where we're building. Last game was a bit of a foundation for this new era of AFL games, and they've done a good job with that and enjoyed that, and excited to see what they've done. The graphics up another level. The stands look amazing, some of the grounds and things like that. And they've changed a few like goal kicking, I think, is a little more intricate now and I think more realistic. And so I haven't actually played it that much to compare the gameplay, but from what I've seen other people say about it, that they've been pretty happy with it so far. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. And I think people's expectations are always too high for a company that's not a major sports game developer. Anyway.
I agree, and I got to say, from what I've seen too, it's very realistic in all of the jumpers. The fact that it's fully licensed is incredible because it means all the signage around all the different stadiums that you play at are accurate. And the best part is, like, a lot of the jumpers, including all of the updates and some of the jumpers that you may only wear on special occasions, are all up to date. Like, I was watching a little bit of some gameplay there, and the Demons one that they brought out this year for Gab Around is already on the game. So you love to see that, Sam, the fact that it's up to date. I'm not sure how regularly they're going to do updates with some of those player ratings and so forth. But, yeah, it's wonderful to see. They're not going to update it every week where Rory Lobb does a different haircut. But, it's good to know that they're pretty up to date with it.
All right, let's get on to the round of things. Round 9 kicked off last night. Collingwood won by 14 points in the end, 12-11, 83 to 15-7, 97 over the Dockers. Can I just say, I started off thinking about this game when I first saw that it was going to be a Thursday night game. I thought, oh no, here we go. We've not had a great choice of prime time games on Thursday and Fridays, and I thought, oh, geez, Fremantle put such a shocking performance up last week. I thought they're just going to get completely bombed away here, but credit to Fremantle. They really showed some fight last night, and that's the Fremantle that you want to see, and that is the effort. And Collingwood are just a bit too touch of class, just were a bit too good for them, but I was really impressed the way they took things on at their home ground.
Yeah, they needed to respond, Sam. There's no question they've been one of the real underperformed teams of the season, it must be said. And just when we thought they were, starting to sort of get back to form, they have that shock loss to Melbourne. They win a game that they're supposed to win, and then they have a shocking loss to St Kilda, a real terrible outing in Melbourne. And you just think, oh, wow, this is a really bad side that, might lose their coach before the end of the season. But, yeah, these kind of performances where the team, in front of a home crowd just comes to play. Yeah, sure, they didn't get the 4 points, but I think Fremantle fans probably walk away from that game going, yeah, we gave it a really good roost. And I think Collingwood, are one of the most informed teams in the competition right now. I mean, Jamie Elliott kicked 6 on the night, and they have a lot of contributors. Yeah, six goals, and didn't do them in junk time either, Sam. Like, no. I mean, there wasn't really a junk time, if we're honest. I think maybe the margin got out to 20 points, and the Dockers kind of kept it really close for most of the night. In fact, the Dockers got out of the blocks early in this game, and I think Collingwood just got in front by quarter time, but it was all the Dockers early on. And one of the incidents that stood out to me was Lachie Schultz, unfortunately, against his old side, getting knocked out. I don't think the tackler's got any case to answer there. I just think it's just one of those footy acts. It's one of those. I mean, it might be discussed this week, Sam, and that would be disappointing. Yeah. It just looked like a footy act where I think he
just got caught under
a tackle.
Yeah.
And then there was probably a secondary action there where, he kind of lands, like, I guess his hip into his head. But it almost reminded me of Jordan Lewis, just when, the player's out before he hits the ground and he kind of puts his arm up. You just hate to see it.
Yeah. And it's not a good look.
It's not a good look, but it's again, it's one of those footy incidents, and you could see how distressed some of the players were on the bench when that happened. I think Collingwood actually ended up getting a goal in that same play. I mean, they probably, it's off the ball, but you probably want to see the play stop there. But it's one of those things where in the end, Collingwood still get the goal. But yeah, it was just a really hard incident to watch. But I agree with you, Sam. Good performance. I think, the Pies rested a few players in this game. They didn't take Pendles on the road and a few other players they managed. So to still get that win and to still get some good performances from some sort of players on the outer like Olev Markov, it just shows the depth of the Pies at the moment, which was probably tested even more so last year and they weren't able to perform. So yeah, I think very good signs for the Pies, ominous signs for the Pies going forward.
Yeah, no, they definitely look... They're playing above where I thought they would be, especially with their age again. The whole Geelong thing where team's too old, well, it's been proven before that. So I hope for my sake it's not for too much longer, though, because it's a long season, but we'll see.
It is.
Friday night, tonight, 7:40 as of recording, St Kilda take on Carlton at the MCG for Spud's game, which is a massive cause. Spud Frawley Foundation. Mental health will have that massive stop and silence before the game and to chat to a mate. I think it's a good game on the calendar. I don't think they've ever done a Spuds game at the MCG, which makes things interesting. Looking at the team changes, St Kilda bring in Matthew Filippo, out Toby Trevilliga. In for Carlton, Jack Silvani, Jackson Binns, Francis Evans, out Sam Doherty, Lockie Fogarty and Matthew Carroll. Now, I've just wiped last week's game from my mind because that was horrible. The game against... we are cursed at Adelaide Oval against Adelaide. I know I was a bit more optimistic in the show last week, but... we haven't done well in that fixture in the past, and we definitely did not. So let's just put that one into the history books and come out tonight. Now, how do you think Ross Lyon's shutdown gameplay works at the G?
Oh, yeah.
Compared to Marvel.
Well, I think significantly, Sam, because, we think about what St Kilda do where they bring typically a player up to stoppages and really turn it into a super congested game, which doesn't allow a lot of scoring. You can't really do that at the G, and I think this is going to be a great test for how St Kilda combat particularly the really strong midfield of Carlton, where you've got so many balls on the inside, but then you've actually started to see some good run and dash on the outside, and how St Kilda will stop that. I don't think St Kilda necessarily match up that well with the beast that you have in the midfield, but I think the outside class for the Saints, their best opportunity might be to possess the ball, Sam, and try and use those massive wings at the G, but I think trying to turn it into a real dour affair might be more challenging at the MCG. Was that your kind of thoughts as well on it?
Yeah. I feel like, with the wider ground, it's going to be much harder for them to really suffocate that kind of thing. So, and I feel like Carlton play the MCG pretty well.
Yeah.
Compared to Marvel, I don't know. It's hard to say. But all I'm thinking back to is that horrible game last year against Saints where they got us in the last couple of seconds and they won by 2 points. So I think that'll be sorely in the minds. I remember having to cheer on Port Adelaide to win so we could get into the 8 against Freo, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't want to do that again.
No.
So, yeah, interesting one. I think we've got, in the last couple of years, it's probably been 50-50. They've had our number for a while, so I think it's another one of our bogey teams in a sense. But I'm not certain on this, but I think the last time that we played them on the G, which was more than 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was a St Kilda celebration, and we bet them there. So that was a long while ago, but that's what I'm taking from that.
Yeah, I think if this game was at Marvel and the form that the Saints are in right now, I would probably pick them a little bit more comfortably. But I'm going to tip the Blues at the G. I think you playing the ground more regularly than the Saints factors in, and I was always concerned with St Kilda, even in their premiership contending eras in sort of the late 2000s, that there was always going to be issues with, playing on the MCG up against a Geelong or a Collingwood that play the G a lot more regularly. So, look, I love the matchup. I think this is one of the matchups of the round, just as far as where both teams are at. We're sort of looking at the 8, and we'll probably get to the 8 at the end of this episode, Sam. But a lot of pundits are saying it's pretty set, but I still think there's 2 or 3
Who's
spots
saying that?
it's just, the couch. And I think, come on, get off the couch, guys, and get your head into the games. I still think there's plenty of season to play out. And you look at, I think there's 6 spots, Sam, that might only be separated by a game or 2. So, look, if top 4, I think is one of those fluid things, but there's probably 4 teams that won't miss from here. But I still think there's plenty of spots available, and I think these 2 sides are sort of in that second tier of teams that are looking to at least grab that 7 for 8 spot. So still very early on.
Season's hanging by a thread for the Blues. If we lose this one, it's pretty much one and done. I think
makes it hard. Makes it hard. Makes it really hard. In saying all of that, I will tip the Blues in this just because it is at the MCG, Sam. I think you've got to bounce back after that performance. I didn't think you were terrible in the first half, and we actually did do a call. I was still awake miraculously at the UNL. It was 1 a.m. or something. But, I thought your first half wasn't terrible. I just thought the Crows just sort of overwhelmed you and, won the moments and then eventually got ascendancy in that game. So, Blues for me in this one.
Moving on to Saturday, 1:20 p.m. at the MCG, Melbourne and Hawthorn. Melbourne changes are Jacob Van Rooyen, Clayton Oliver, Matthew Jefferson comes in, out Jack Viney, Jake Melksham and Harrison Petty. In for Hawthorn, Carl Amon, out Tom Barrass. What do we think about this one? Hawthorn, after their big celebration last weekend, which I thought the club did a very good job of pre-game, and Melbourne getting a little things back on track. What are we thoughts about this one?
Yeah, despite Hawthorn having a pretty comfortable win in the end, I don't think Hawthorn, and probably by their own admission too, Sam, are playing their absolute best footy, but they're getting the win, and that's always a sign of a really classy side where they can, not play their absolute best and still win by, 8 to 10 goals. That's kind of where Hawthorn's at the moment. They don't really get a massive challenge this week, being Melbourne. With all respect to Melbourne, the last couple of weeks they have managed to bank a few wins, which has been good since that Fremantle game. They have been playing a little bit less dour footy, but at the same time, Sam, they would probably also admit that, they haven't really had a challenge. But for Melbourne, this is a great challenge. I mean, MCG, Hawthorn, slightly out of form. This is a good time for them to get them and potentially take their first scalp of the season, Sam. Yeah, it's an interesting clash. A couple of those outs do concern me for Melbourne. A little bit of experience does go out there. Good to see Jacob Van Rooyen back. I mean, he was a bit of a non-factor early in the season, but we know at his best what he can do. But yeah, the Hawks, they just keep banking the wins, Sam. It's you would think that trend continues in this game, but do you see Melbourne potentially causing an upset here, Sam?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they're good enough yet. I know that they were pretty solid against West Coast, but West Coast is West Coast. It's such a shame though, because I feel like Gawn is playing out of his skin at the moment, and so we can't be faltering him. But I still think they've got a lot of work to do, and I think Hawthorn will want to get their game going a bit to the level that they were last year. So I think Hawthorn for me.
Yeah, Hawthorn for me, I think, in this one as well, Sam. But yeah, if Hawthorn don't show up in this, I think the D's can get them, but I don't think they will.
4:15 p.m. Marvel Stadium. Essendon take on the Sydney Swans. Changes for the teams for Essendon in Lewis Hayes, Archer Day Wicks, Jai Caldwell, Dylan Shield, and Saad Al-Houli. Sorry.
Al-Houli, yep.
Out Jordan Ridley, Jade Gresham, Jai Menzies, Elijah Siadis, and Harrison Jones. One change for Sydney. Ben Patton comes in for Lewis Malikan. A lot of changes for the Bombers.
There are, Sam, and this really did surprise me. I must be honest. Obviously, injury creates opportunity, and it was a bit of carnage against the Roos. I think Harrison Jones' injury did turn out to be a lot better than what the club initially expected,
and that was one of those watch.
Really gruesome injury, Sam. You said it, and the poor guy, I mean, I feel like every year he just kind of gets struck by something. So hopefully good recovery for him. But I like the ins. I really like the ins. I think Lewis Hayes, as a tall defender, has been knocking down the door for weeks now. It's a shame that Jaden Laverty, I mean, he celebrates game maybe 100 last week, and he's been in the comp for a very long time. So just hasn't been durable, Sam. He's had a couple of really good seasons, but just hasn't stayed on the park, which is really disappointing for Essendon because they need a player like that to be interceptor, great with the ball. But yeah, Lewis Hayes, through injury comes opportunity, and so I think he's a really good inclusion. And Archer Day Wicks, I think he was taken in the rookie draft, Sam, had quite a few injuries after, sort of breaking out in some of the sort of the lower competitions, Vic Metro and so forth. So, look, he's a real X factor. I think he's really dangerous in front of goal, but he's kind of been known to drop in and out of games. But, yeah, this guy can be anything. That's what I've been hearing. That's been the narrative around him, and good opportunity for him. I think he's wearing 44, so correct me if I'm wrong, Tommy Bell Chambers' old number. So couldn't be totally different players, but he used to float out of games, I guess, so you could make the argument for that. But
he's sitting on my bench in Supercoach Day Wicks.
Oh, okay.
So maybe he might be a cash cow. Who knows?
And he's in the centre. He's in the gut, Sam. So it'd be interesting. I imagine he'll play centre forward in this game. But, yeah, fascinating to see if he'll be the sub or if he'll play full minutes. I want to see him play full minutes. I think it's a great opportunity for him. But, yeah, interesting to be playing so many debutants against the Swans. I guess back in form against the Giants, they look like the Swans of old. So it's going to be a tough task, Sam.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this fixture in many different years, and probably more sake on the SCG, I've got a lot more memories of things being a bit feisty. I know Dan Rampy climbed the posts.
Yep.
A few controversial umpire decisions in games gone past, I think, as well. So there is a bit of feistiness between Sydney and Essendon.
There is, Sam. A couple of people asked me a while ago, like who's your most hated team? And, a lot of people, Carlton, Collingwood, Hawthorn. And I said Sydney because I didn't like the way, I really didn't like the way some of the players went about it in those games. Tom Papley used to always stir the pot. And I remember Luke Parker did this little sort of shrug sign to
I remember
Dylan
that.
Shield. And it boiled my blood, Sam. And I remember when we bet them later in that year, the players were getting stuck into him, and I'm like, there's a bit of fight, So there's something about these two clubs. I think it maybe goes all the way back to that Tony Lockett moment in the prelim final. So it's just there's something about it. So look, I would love to see a bit of feist here, Sam. But yeah, unfortunately the Dons get the Swans at a time where they're just starting to find some form. So I think it'll be hard for the Dons to curtail that. But who are you going in this game?
I've gone the Swannies, sorry. They've finally got their things turning around. I know it's at Marvel, which is probably more in your favour. And the changes that you come in, sometimes you need a big sweep and you can freshen up and get things. So I'm going to say Swans, but never know.
Yeah, look, I'm not overly confident in the Dons in this one, but despite that, I will be tipping them just in a little bit of a Saturday afternoon upset. I think, the young boys, come on, raise the roof.
Is that a good time for you, 4:15 p.m?
On a Saturday, I'm not too sure.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, no.
Gold Coast Suns v Western Bulldogs Saturday night, 7:35 up at TO Stadium in Darwin. The sweat will be coming through the TV. It'll be the so humid. Ins and outs. Gold Coast Suns, Braden Florini, Ben Long, Sam Closeley, Malcolm Roses. Out Ethan Reid, Lockie Weller, David Swallow and Connor Budrick. Western Bulldogs have Harley Gallagher and Caleb Poulter come in. Out Adam Treloar and Jed Buslinger. So Treloar getting injured already. That's a bit disappointing.
It is, because when he's at his best, Sam, he is such a damaging player. He's just got that extra little bit of leg, and he's a joy to watch. And that Bulldogs midfield, I just feel like there's always, imminent changes so far this season. That's kind of been the tail of it, but it hasn't necessarily curtailed their performance, Sam. When one goes down, another one comes in, and I'm sure Poulter, the ex-Pie, will be right in and amongst it as well. But yeah, that was a really domineering performance by the Dogs. I was actually watching that game. I was up for it. It was about 8 or 9 p.m. at night here in the US. It was just the perfect time slot to watch footy. As we said before, not the best aesthetic, but as far as the Dogs were playing, I mean, that is as electrifying footy as I've seen all season, Sam, from like just as one-sided as you could get. The power just couldn't get their hands on the footy. And I got to say, if the Bulldogs play like that, it doesn't matter where they play. They could be playing literally on Mars. There's no team that is going to be putting a glove on them. So I know Darwin's been a little bit of a happy hunting ground for the Suns, and I think a lot of people are probably going to be saying, well, the Suns just, they know these conditions, as you said, a little bit more of a dewy kind of ball. But the Dogs in the form that they're in, Sam, gosh, they just seem to be world beaters.
I know, but we've seen that so many times from the Bulldogs, and then all it takes is that, and they're down with the rest of the field.
That's true.
I am a bit more, and I've always been a bit more sceptical on them just because of that, but they can prove me wrong. The last time they did play at TO, the Suns did win by 7 points, which was 2023, so a while ago. Right. But obviously that was still in the days before the new changes and the new Suns that we're seeing. So adding that into the mix with the new kind of prowess, and I think losing in the Q clash would have been pretty crushing for them. They definitely would have built that up for a big one. So I'm expecting a big response, and if they're going to be this big team that they want to be, this would be a massive win. I think I'm going to go with the Suns.
You're going to go with the Suns?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards the Suns as well, Sam, for those reasons. They are a different side there. I remember they did a number on Geelong last year when Geelong were in pretty decent form. Yep. I think they pantsed them and they kicked a ridiculous score like 160 or 170. So you don't see that too often.
No.
I think those Indigenous players for the Suns, they really build up this game too. I mean, I would imagine it would be a huge privilege to play in the Northern Territory, as an Indigenous player, having those fans there, inspiring the next generation. There's truly nothing like it. And on the build-up to Sir Doug Nicholls round, I really do look forward to this game. And having my brother who lived up in Darwin for a long time there, I know how tough those conditions are, but I also know just kind of how laid back that community is. And, obviously I think it is more of an NRL market, Sam. I think the fact that now footy's getting played up there and it's kind of played all year round, I think it's a beautiful thing. So I'm glad that they don't just do the marquee game there for Sir Doug Nicholls. They actually play a couple of games there. I think it's wonderful.
Well, and this comes to the question. It would be really interesting, say, if a 20th Northern Crocs team that would play in those conditions, whether it be both at Kazali and there, and you could really master a home dominance in that kind of conditions. It would be really interesting to watch. I've always thought about that.
I would love an NT team to be in the comp, Sam. That's just flat out. It'd be amazing.
Okay, 8:10 p.m. at Adelaide Oval. Unfortunately, these games are on at the same time, so you're going to have the double screen going. The big Adelaide Showdown. Port Adelaide versus the Adelaide Crows. Crows v Power. We know what these have been like before. They are a massive thing. I would say out of the big Melbourne games, if I was picking a Q Clash or a Western Derby, if I had to go to one of them, Showdown's definitely, I think, the one I'd pick. I think there's just something fire in the belly with that one. They're very passionate Adelaide fans. Changes for the teams. Port Adelaide, Dante Vicente comes in, Josh Sin, Christian Miraz, Jed McEntee, Ryan Burton out, Will Lorenz, Willie Rioli, Jordan Sweet, Logan Evans, and Joe Berry. Even says personal reasons in the AFL app. Yeah, we'll leave that one back where we left it in the first segment. Adelaide, Mitchell Hinge comes in and Brodie Smith is out. Port sitting 12th, Adelaide sitting 5th. Adelaide doing pretty well. Bit of an unknown. I really am lost with this game.
I am too, Sam. I really am too. I think Adelaide are a couple of wins away from, I think we know now that Adelaide can beat most of the teams below them. But as we know in a showdown, Port are the exception in the sense of you just know that this game can throw up all kinds of possible outcomes. Like when Port were really flying last season, Adelaide found a way to beat them. It's one of those games. I think that's a wonderful call, what you said. I think as a non-South Australian fan, this is like the one envy game that you have that's like, I would love to see this in person. This is just one of those games that would just be incredible to be at. Because I think it's USC, UCLA here in the US. There's this whole hazing thing that happens where both camps in different campuses, Sam, they have to actually protect their statues from getting vandalized every year when this game is on. I feel like there might be fans from either side across the city that might have to protect their own territory just in case it gets vandalized. I just get that kind of feeling by this particular clash. It's the closest thing to that I can think of. But yeah, I'm really lost on this game. I think just based on form, you got to tip the Crows, but you know the emotional stakes that come with Port Adelaide. They've swung the axe. It would not surprise me in the slightest if they got up for this, Sam. In fact, I'm going to tip the Power just based on the emotion side of it, Sam.
Crows.
Yep.
I think they've been a bit more solid. Yeah.
Yep.
But it could easily go your way as well. Maybe even a draw. So
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me seeing a draw.
Okay, Sunday, 1:10 p.m. Richmond take on the West Coast Eagles at the MCG. Kane McAfee, I'm not sure how to say it. Jasper Elgar, Thomas Sims, Tyler Sonsi, out Morris Rioli. West Coast Eagles, Sandy Brock, Noah Long, Tom Gross, Bailey Williams, Harry Edwards, out Jeremy McGovern and Beau Allen. Another ugly games for the Eagles. You wouldn't think 16th versus 18th could be an ugly game you'd think it'd be a pretty even contest, but I would say Richmond are going to win this pretty comfortably.
You would have to say, based on their current form, they are, Sam. And the big question for Richmond fans are going to be, are they going to boo, a couple of those players that were a part of their premiership side that went over to the West Coast Eagles and, are they, Jack Graham and, there's a few players there that crossed over. It'll be interesting to see, but yeah, I think if this game was in the West, you would have a bit more confidence in the Eagles. And a few people have said, is this going to be the Eagles' first opportunity to look at a win? But I don't know. Based on Richmond at the G this season, they've been quite impressive there, Sam.
Yeah. I think Richmond, they've definitely proved this year that it's not going to be too long before they're back up and about. And I think they've... Well, I think if you're an Adam Uze, I think you'd be pretty happy with that because with the Tasmanian Devils knocking on the door to all the draft and stuff, you would want to be getting that sorted pretty quickly.
Correct.
Moving on to 3:20 at GMHBA, Geelong take on the GWS Giants. In for Geelong, Graham Myers, Ted Closeley, George Stevens, Jed Buse, Jay Polkinghorne, out Lawson Humphreys, Reece Stanley as well. GWS Giants have Jake Riccardi come in, Harry Rouston, Cody Angove, Ryan Angwin, out Darcy Jones. Come to think of it, I think GWS and Geelong have had some good games down at GMHBA as well. So I guess similar ground size and feel to, I would say, Giants' home ground back up in Sydney. Again, they'll be disappointed losing the Sydney derby. I don't know what's happened to Giants in the last couple of weeks. They're really looking like they were really producing something really exciting for the season. So can they come out for this game and get the Cats away? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one?
Sam, I hope my memory serves me correct, but I think it was around this time last year where the Giants, they started like a house on fire and then they just had this random form slump around this time of the year. But then probably the last quarter of the season, they really found it again and looked quite dangerous in the finals. But of course, lost a couple of those games where they had fade outs. So, yeah, I am concerned for the Giants in the sense that they're not putting their best footy together right now, but we know when they find it, they're almost unstoppable. But this is where you've got to start training that resilience, and they've got to win games like this if they want to be the premiership favourite that we kind of thought that they were going to be. We just thought they were just going to be domineering all season, but yeah, they have dropped a couple here and there and just haven't looked good in massive phases in their game. So it is a bit of a concern for sure. And Geelong down at home, I mean, they've just, we know how good they are. But you are right. This particular fixture has thrown up some really good games in the past. And the Giants have actually won, not just one, but several at GMHBA Stadium too, which should be noted because some teams just can't flat win down there. So that's pretty impressive from a Giants perspective. But you've got to say, with the form that the Cats are in at the moment, they are looking like they're back to their best too. But yeah, Sam, I think I'm tipping Geelong just down the highway in this one. But Giants, can they recapture that form?
Last two games they played against each other, both at GMHBA. Geelong lost 74-78, 4-point victory to the Giants. The one before that, Geelong 74 to Giants 81. So the same score for Geelong.
Wow.
Interesting. So
that
the
is
Giants
interesting.
won the last two at GMHBA.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won another one in previous seasons too, Sam. So that they don't fear the road. They don't fear down at GMHBA, which is really impressive too, because I wouldn't imagine too many of their fans would be travelling down to that. But, Sam, do you think that factors in?
You know what? And I don't often do this, but I coming into this recording, I was confident on Geelong, but I'm just had a feeling I'm switching over to the Giants.
Follow it. I love it, Sam. I love it. We've both gone some opposition tips here, so this could be this could be a make or break round, even though I have no idea where we are on the ledger against each other.
Yeah, we need to find that out. If I give you some homework,
along, please tell us where we rank.
North Melbourne take on Brisbane in the final game of the round, 4:40 p.m. at, can you believe it, Ninja Stadium. So get some of those stars ready to throw. Have you heard of Ninja Stadium?
I have not. Where is this? Is this Tassie?
Yes, this is, of course it's Tassie. It's Hobart, I believe. I think it's, if you've heard of the Ninja ice cream makers.
Did that used to be Blundstone Arena, Sam?
I think
or
so.
Or the other one?
I'm not sure.
UTAS Stadium.
I think it doesn't really make a difference.
So I think it used to be UTAS, I believe.
Yes.
I'd have to,
but yeah, Ninja's, I think, that ice cream maker and things. So it's not actually Ninjas that are sponsoring. Interesting. All right, changes so far for North Melbourne. Toby Pink, Aidan Core, George Wardlaw, Zach Fisher, Griffin Logue, Geordie Payne. Out, Caelan Dawson, Jackson Archer and Will Phillips. Brisbane, Logan Morris, Kai Lohman, Ty Gallop, James Tunstall, Darcy Fort. Out, Sam Day, Will McLaughlin. Brisbane. There's not much more I'm going to say. Although Tasmania could throw up some interesting results.
Oh, savvy boy, I love it.
It's just, yeah.
I love that. No, look, I think North had a really massive chance last week against the Bombers. That was a much improved performance. But again, the starts that North Melbourne are having are really hurting them. I mean, they're just not getting out of the gates quick enough, and it was 6-2 in that first term again.
That was an ugly game, that one.
It was a really ugly game. I think the Dons only kicked 3 goals after that point in the game. So, yeah, the Dons were pretty poor in that game too. But yeah, look, North, they've shown signs this season, but the fans are going to want full 4 quarters, and I can completely understand that. But Brisbane coming off the Q Clash, they're just all class at the moment, and yes, I think they just continue their merry form, Sam. But yeah, we'll see if North can back up 2 weeks in a row and at least make this a close game. That'll be the big test for them, I think.
All right, that is round 9. We'll look up the top 8 now. We'll start to look at the ladder now just a little bit.
Okay.
We're not going to be like on the couch and call that one and done now. But Collingwood sit on top as of recording. Brisbane Lions below them. Hawthorn, Gold Coast, Adelaide, Western Bulldogs, Geelong, GWS, and remembering Gold Coast's are a game behind everyone else.
Yes.
And Collingwood's obviously played. I might as well keep reading. Fremantle's, St Kilda, Essendon, Port, Carlton, Sydney, Melbourne, Richmond, North Melbourne, and West Coast Eagles. So interesting. Starting to shape a little bit, but still think there's a long way to go with that one.
I think so. And as silly as it sounds, as poorly as Melbourne have played this season, like they could just string a few more wins together and make it really interesting at that bottom part of the 8. So all the way down to them, I just feel like it's really open hunting season in a lot of ways, and we just know that teams fluctuate from week to week, so it's still a massive factor. And for both of us, we hope that 8 isn't set as well, because we're not there. So let's hope something can happen.
Long season still to go,
season,
and that means
boy.
plenty of more in the Ballpark podcast episodes to dive and delve and discuss. So thank you very much for listening. Please stay up to date with all our content on social media across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you can find a platform, and give us a rating if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can watch the video version on YouTube. So spread us around if you've listened, and thank you, because this has been a particularly long episode. So if you've gotten through to the end, well done on you. Thank you very much, Michael.
Sammy boy, appreciate it as always. Enjoy the game tonight. It is going to be a beauty. And of course, Spud's game as well. We love the ring of players in the middle of the ground. It's a great cause. And I just think this is going to be a very popular fixture come future games. Sammy boy, enjoy.
Thank you. Go Blues.
Your news, reviews, and previews this AFL season.
Listen to In the Ballpark. Download the podcast now.